Hey guys, in today's SQL for Excel users, we're going to look at the group by and the having commands, and we're going to look at aggregate functions. And as usual, we're going to look at Excel and in how to do it in SQL Server. Now we're going to bounce back and forth a little bit. So the first thing we're going to take on is what is an aggregate function. And it's a way to group things together and do something with them. Most of the time an aggregate function is numeric, but I'll show you a case where it might not be. So what I want to do here is I'm over on my Northwind sales sheet, and I have formatted this as a table already. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to add a totals row to the bottom. So with tables in Excel, you can right click, go to table, and add a totals row. All right, now we've got sales here. What if we want to know what the entire sales are for this whole data set? Well, I can just click here and I can go down to sum. And it sums up all the sales for that sheet. What if I want the average sales? Well, I can click down here and I can go to average. What about the min and the max sale? I've got those two. I've got the min. That's the smallest sale we have in our database. And let's do the max. And now I told you there would be one that doesn't work on numbers, and that's the count. You can do it on numbers, but if you wanted to count how many items there were, then you would go down here to count. And it will tell you how many items are in this data set. So that's how to do aggregates in Excel. Now, one of the things that is kind of nice that we'd like to know, even though we've got the count of the number of items in our data set and the sum of sales, we've got some categories here. We've got office supplies, furniture, technology, and subcategories. We've got some states. What if we want to know the total number of items and the total sales for the technology group? So let's click this drop down in category and take that off and go down to technology and click OK. Well, now I've got 1,847 items in my data set, and the sales are 836,000. Pretty good year. So that's basically an aggregation as a way to add up or use another similar function to get kind of a tally of what's in that group you selected. And that's going to lead us right into how to do aggregations in SQL by using the group by. All right, well, let me pull up my SQL Server. And I'm going to maximize the screen now. So let's start off by first building just our basic query from Northwind. So I'll go to databases and go to my Northwind, right click on it. Oh, I'm going to go down here. And I'm going to go to tables, and I'm going to right click on Northwind orders and do a script table as select to new query window. Comes up there, great. Let's go ahead and run this just to see what it is again. And it pulls up my entire data set. Again, same number of rows as the Excel, 9,994. So let's look at those aggregate functions first. So I can go down here and let me just grab the from so I can have help building it. And I'm just going to do several of those aggregate functions in SQL kind of by hand. So I've got select sales from DBO Northwind orders. So what I could do for my function is I can put the count of sales. And I get the total number. Now another thing that people do sometimes when they're doing counts is you just do it on the asterisk. So instead of count sales, I can just do a count of the rows. So let's see what that does. It's going to bring back the same answer. Okay. So from there, let's try some of the other ones. So instead of count of sales, let's do the sum. And I've got the sum of sales now. What about the average number of sales? That's going to be AVG. That's going to be the average sale. And then I can do the min and the max. All right. I get the min and the max, just like we did in Excel. Now, this is pretty easy. I think this gives you a good illustration of what an aggregate is, but watch what happens when I try to add another field, like maybe the order date in here. Let me get this back here. And okay. So now if I run this, I get an error because I've mixed aggregate functions with non-aggregate. I didn't put any aggregate function on the order ID, so it doesn't know what to do. And that's where the group by comes in, okay? That's where we need to have the group by to put a field in there to tell SQL to group it by and then apply the aggregate to it. Let's not do order ID. Let's go ahead and do another one. Let me see here what we're gonna do. Let's try to do a count of categories. So I'm gonna do oops. From Northwind orders, but this time I'm going to add group by category, and I'll just throw an order by on there. And let's see what happens there. All right, so now what you can see is SQL Server has grouped by the category field and it's applied that aggregation of the count of order ID to every single category. So now I've got the count of the number of records in each of my categories. That's pretty cool. What if I want to have multiple categories? What if I want to have another level? Well, it's easy. You just add it in. So now instead of just category, I'm going to do comma, subcategory. Get the count ID and execute that. Oh, I got an error. You know why? Because I forgot to put subcategory on the group by command. And this is important because now when you're using group by, every field that you put in the select has to either be part of the group by statement or it has to have an aggregation applied to it. That's very key to get this to work. And we can order by that too. Let's see how that works. All right, we got our furniture category, our subcategory, and the counts there. Now, when I have multiple levels just in one select statement, I don't get a summation of the furniture. We'll get into how to add it in much later because that's going to be when we start doing some subqueries or CTEs or even window commands. But for now, we're just trying to capture the logic of the group by. So everything you do in the group by is going to tell SQL Server to kind of combine these together and then apply those groupings to whatever aggregation you put on there. So why don't we do another one? Instead of just the count of the order ID, why don't we put the sales on there too? So I'll go here and I'm going to do a comma, sum of sales. And let's execute this and see what happens. So now that's really cool. We've got the number of items in each subcategory as well as the sum of the sales for each one. So this is where we start really using SQL to generate some more meaningful information off of just our data. Okay, so I'm going to teach you guys another little feature of SQL Server. If you notice, look at the third and fourth columns. It says no column name and no column name. The first two are easy, category and subcategory. Those are the field names. But we kind of made our own field here with the third and fourth field, and we didn't really give it a name. So here's something you can do to any field, but it really is useful when you do aggregates. After the field, but before the comma, if we put in the word as, and then give it a field name, I'm going to call this number of orders. And then for sales, I'm going to call that And this is a technique known as aliasing, because later we'll be able to refer to the count of order ID with number of orders, and total sales will refer to the sum of sales. So if I run that now, oh, I put a space in there. That is my bad. So I have to get rid of that space, and we'll run it again. And now you see I've got those aliases up here as the column heading. So that's kind of a nice feature too. You can rename fields. You can do that to regular fields as well if you want to. The next thing that we want to talk about is the having command. Now having is the where clause of the group by, okay? And it lets you reduce, or it lets you filter your information down based on the aggregates that you have. So normally with a where clause, we could put a where clause in there and just pick one category, maybe office supplies. So I could come here, I could just say, let's run this. And now I've just got office supplies. But what if I want to only see the orders where we had more than 500 orders? I can't do that in a where clause because that's an aggregation. So that's where we have to come in here and put the having. Having the count of order ID, you have to redo your aggregation in the having. In some version of SQL you don't. You can use the alias right here, but in SQL Server you can't do that. Having order ID greater than 500. And go ahead and execute. And now I just got those entries where we have more than 500 orders for that subcategory. So that's basically it. The having, I think of it like a where clause because it's very similar. It lets you limit your data down, but it only works with the group by. And within the group by, it only works with those fields you have turned into aggregations. You can also, as you can see, you can have both a where and a having in the same select statement. The where clause always gets evaluated first before the group by. It limits the data that you're going to have as part of the rest of your SQL statement. Well, now one last thing that I'm going to do before we wrap up this module is I'm going to change the order by. Since I'm doing it with a having, maybe it'd be nice to have those numbers in the right order too. So I can say order by count of the order ID. And now it ordered those in the count of the number of orders. So that's really basically it. The group by will let you add up or aggregate values based on a certain category, subcategory, state, city, whatever else is in your table. You can do a group by, and in the aggregates, let you sum up or add or get a min or a max or an average or do some kind of large-scale valuation of a number in your database. All right, well, that will wrap up our lesson on group by, having, and aggregates, and hope to see you back soon.